Hey, this is Bill Gladwell, and welcome to episode number 15 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. In this episode, I sit down with comedian Tom McTiernan. Tom has appeared at New York City's and LA's best comedy clubs, including Comic Strip Live, the Gotham Comedy Club, and the World Famous Improv. On television, Tom has appeared on Comedy Central and the Metro Channel. Tom has also worked in Atlantic City and Las Vegas, where he has opened for numerous acts, including Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Tom and I talk about starting your career the same week as 9/11, performing in front of a fireplace, Tom's influences, learning something new every night, how to start in the business now, the importance of standing out, Tom's worst gig ever, managers and agents, and balancing home and the road. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, and when you do, leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Bill Gladwell, and you can jump on my website with any questions and comments at BillGladwellLive.com. So enjoy episode 15 of the Hey Look at Me podcast.
To promote TV, comedy shows. I'll do research, and I'll write some stuff on whatever's in the news, that kind of stuff. But
not even that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I put together the podcast, and it's called Hey Look at Me. You probably saw that when you took a look at it. And it was because I grew up in that small town in Ohio, which was Lima, and there was nothing there back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was trying to get into show business.
Yeah.
I had no mentors. We had no internet, not at that time. And it was winging it to get into corporate gigs and to do some of the comedy clubs that I did with the Stage Comedy Hypnosis show. And it was hard. So I thought, well, I wish I had something at the time that was like a podcast.
Yeah. That
I could hear, if nothing else, tips from other performers, but just stories about what they're going through, to know that I'm not the only one out there going through the same thing that they're going through.
That's a good premise. It's so hard. Everybody's got a podcast, so it's so hard to find a unique take right now, because everybody's got it. But you just got to keep, searching.
And for the first 2 episodes, we didn't even have a title, because we had Mike Armstrong for the first one. And I can't say Dean Napolitano maybe for the second one, and I didn't know what I was going to call it. And then it just, as we went along, the theme with both of them and every comedian that I talked to, they say, we stand up front and say, "Hey, look at me," and I said, "That's a good name for the podcast," and that's what we turned it into.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
So,
hey, look at me.
But we're live, I guess. So,
okay, cool.
Tom McTiernan.
Tom McTiernan.
For some reason, I can't say on stage. I can say it out here, but not on stage.
And what the funniest thing is, everybody said, if they make a mistake, they always say Tim. And I'm like, I always thought McTiernan was the harder part.
Me too.
And everybody says Tim McTiernan. I'm like, Tim. So McTiernan, they get off fine. The O and the I are obviously the 2 big obstacles in my name.
I have it phonetically spelled out on the card up front now, so I can. It's McTiernan.
Yeah.
And but it's the NAN on the end that's getting me instead of just the AN. McTiernan I had, but the extra N in there.
Because there's so many derivatives of the Irish and the Gaelic in this. Because I'm Scottish, so there's so many McTiernan, just Tiernan, Tierney.
How long have you been doing this?
I'm doing this full time. Believe it or not, ironically or not, 9/11 2001 was my first.
Really?
Was my first professional week.
On the week.
Yeah, I started doing open mics and stuff in the 90s, late 90s and stuff. But yeah, that was my first paid gig, and never got off the ground. So I was on a plane. I was on a plane that morning to fly to Chicago to go to Houston to work at Comedy Club for my first week, but we never left because it was a 9 a.m. flight, and then
happened right around that time.
Everything else, so it was the exact same time, 9 o'clock. So like,
wow.
That's
So you and I,
if it's an omen or a bad, is this a bad sign? Is this?
Well, no, I got you to hear. So
So then the fortunate thing is, right after that, there was so many benefits, fundraisers, and stuff, and everything had gone so well that, conversely to thinking like, well, maybe this is the wrong thing because I never got off the ground, it became so the right thing because I did so many good things for so many good people that make you feel so good inside, and it brought out the best in me. You know what I mean? It brought out the true heart of comedy and just my feelings and mainly just my heart. It was this amazing month, awful on one side, but just being able to help so many people through what you do, fundraising, even just being on hand and collecting food and being down there, it was
I told you I was in the city for 9/11.
Yes, yeah, you told me.
And at the time, I didn't notice a difference. Everybody was in a panic at the time. But after I left and came back a couple months later, the tone of the city had changed. Everybody was more polite and accommodating, and it was different because I had been to New York quite a few times before that. Did you notice that living there?
Big time. However, I noticed it had such a short shelf life. It had such a brief. I couldn't believe how quickly it ended. How it became right back to road rage, and everybody was, like you say, it just turned into a utopia of humanity. You know, everybody looking to help people, giving people food, water, and then how quick. I hate to take the negative side about it, but it went right back to so fast to what it was. You know.
The status quo,
to people fight, because at the time that was right when I moved out of the city to Jersey, and I'm going through the tunnels, and it used to be like, and you know how it is, it goes like 9 lanes into one, into the Holland Tunnel, and everybody was so nice. 3 weeks later, it's back to like people, bumping into you, cutting you off, giving you the, and like I said, I can't believe this only lasted like 9 weeks, you know what I mean, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you didn't move to New York. You're from New York, right?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island. Then I moved I moved to the city to do stand up, and then.
Did I hear you say you went to high school in the city or not? Did you go to high school in Long Island?
Long Island, yeah.
Long Island, okay.
I was talking to another guy at the show last night.
Yeah.
That went to one of the city high schools.
Gotcha. And how did you know that you wanted to be called a comedian? How did you know you wanted to get into that profession?
Well, funny about that, because it sounds cliche, but I always wanted to do it. I came from a huge family. You've heard that on stage. And my mother had all of these old record albums, which we didn't even have, we had to find a record player even at the time just to play them, because they were records. But I just used to listen to them incessantly. She had, all the old Bill Cosby records and all the George Carlin records and stuff. And instead of schoolwork, I used to just listen to them over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And my parents, another funny gig is something that had just come up. My parents always wanted to get me up in front of the family functions. We had a huge family. And then when people would come over for Christmas, oh, Tom wants to be a comedian. Get up in front of everybody, which is disaster. You know what I mean? And I told my parents, I said, this is stupid, because I'm never going to get a gig in my career in front of a fireplace. And then
that's how Eddie Murphy started off as Raw.
Yeah.
DVD or video.
Yeah, because I had a gig. One of my best. It was a New Year's Eve guy hired me in Jersey to hire for a house party for his New Year's. Saw me at one of the clubs in New York City.
How old were you at this time?
This is about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and by far the best paying gig I ever had, and it was very odd because it was just in his house. So he's like, okay, go up. It's 11:30. We'll have you on till midnight or something. Go on. And I said, this is ironic, because I said I always wanted to be a comedian, and they would tell me to get in front of the fireplace. And I said, I'm never going to get a gig that I work in front of the fireplace. And I said, here I am right now, the best paying gig I've ever had, in front of a fireplace.
Did your parents say I told you so?
Yeah. They loved it. It was a good way to break the ice, because the crowd loved it. You know what I mean? I said, here I am in front of a fireplace, and it's my profession.
How'd it go?
It went phenomenally well. Like I said, you always got to find those little like icebreakers right there to create creatability, because it's hard. People just sitting on a couch, they're drinking, they're waiting for midnight, so they're just like looking at you. So you really gotta just grab it right away. Find a couple of things that's around it, and hit it right away, and then you go into your material and just keep rapid fire. Those kind of things, private things like that, like weddings and stuff. You can't. Don't hire yourself for an hour. Just take 20 minutes. Charge whatever you want. If they want you, they'll want you. Just do it for 20 minutes, because people just want to go back to what they were doing. They want to go back to drinking and everything else. And it went phenomenally well, I mean, it was just, the guy, I'll put this nicely, the guy was connected. I won't say to what, but, and he was just throwing money. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is the best gig, I've ever had. I said, I'm going to do this. If I could do this gig every week.
In the living room.
Yeah, in your living room. I'd have the best career. Oh, well, so it was fun.
You said you knew you always wanted to be a comedian, and when did you?
Always.
I mean, even when you were small. And how did you know? I mean, you learned about him just
not short when I was
younger.
Because I'm still short. Yeah. Going back to grade school, like 5th, 6th grade. Which is kind of unusual. It wasn't. I was only 8 years old.
You and I grew up about the same time, so late 70s, right? I grew up I was born 1972. So when all the big 80s guys came along, I was still a young kid. But I had been wanting to do it forever. Everybody wanted to become a comedian because of all the 80s guys, because of Paul Reiser and Seinfeld and stuff. But I wanted to do it way before that. So who were your mentors or the people that you looked up to?
Bill Cosby was the biggest. I know it's not good timing right now. I'm just talking the comedy. I'm not talking about the extracurriculars and everything else that he did. But I just thought he was brilliant because he could just go out there and go for 2 hours and just tell a story. Because I came from a large family. He came from a family background. And he used to have an album. Like he did, how comedians have tracks.
Yes, right.
What I mean? He would have a whole album just dedicated to one scenario.
I had the vinyl of himself.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, there's another one because my parents had them all. There's one about him and his brother having to stay over. I guess his parents went out for the night, and there was a radio show because they had radio at the time when he was a comedian called the Chicken. It was like a mystery monster theater type thing, and it was about a chicken heart.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the whole hysterical, but the whole album or DVD, CD at the time. It was just that one bit. Imagine just doing. I mean, you can't even do that now. You couldn't go into New York City and do it, an hour and a half thing. People want jokes. And it was just sheer brilliance. So he was definitely the biggest influence.
Did your parents let you listen to him, or did you have to sneak them?
No, they did because they never had anything off color.
Right.
We were.
Bill Cosby's clean.
Yeah, squeaky. What I mean?
On stage.
And everything else they had was from the late 60s, early 70s. So like in the 80s before all those other guys became popular.
Well, you had like Red Fox though doing the some of the stuff that I didn't know if you got into any of those or not.
No, that was a little bit, because I was talking to my parents. It was their stuff, so they didn't have that stuff. But they just had either stuff that they had or their parents had. Bob Newhart, because Bob Newhart did stand up, all those kind of things, and it just really
Bob Hope.
Not that far back, but it was just mostly it was just and they were just so well written and so well presented, absolutely amazing. And it's funny because I was always like the class it's never the class clown that becomes the comedian, never. It's usually always the introvert. Like if you talk, I've heard Seinfeld interviewed several times. Nobody knew who he was. When people found out he had a TV show, all his high school mates were like, "Who is this guy? How did he go to high school?" And nobody even knew him, So it's always like they were out to prove the world that they were somebody,
Yeah.
I wasn't like that. I was like in the real popular group, but I wasn't the class clown. I was just like the really subtle, wise guy who just really sarcastic, you know what I mean? Who got along well with the teachers and had the good lines. I would just sit right in front of them and say things under my breath, and they would love it. Just because you could be so clever.
So as the 80s rolled in, were you a fan of like the Carlins and Murphys and
oh yeah. I mean
Kinnison, all those
because I guess if you remember at the time 80, I don't know what even 80. I was still a little kid. That was when HBO was brand new.
Yeah, we would have been about 10 or 11 at the time. Yeah.
And then that's when they started having those like young comedian specials. Remember that? Like I guess it was Rodney who hosted or something.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
what Seinfeld was on, and Larry Miller and all those guys.
And all of those are on Hulu now. And you can go in and watch all of those.
Those are amazing. Those are amazing. I wish besides the actually original stuff when I was 5 and 6, that was the biggest influence on me. All those guys that were already the comedy club heroes of the 80s, because so many of them were just such brilliant. You draw. I can't think of all the names, like they say Seinfeld and Larry Miller and Paul Reiser, those guys.
Yeah. So not specifically Payne, but when was your first real time on stage doing stand up?
I remember my first time ever was in a place. And there's a couple of guys that are really well-known comics who do the same thing. It was in New York City. there's a famous steakhouse called the Old Homestead. Do you know where it is?
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. There's a big cow in the front. It's like an old.
Really?
Yeah. So there was a bar next door that had a back room where they did comedy. And I think it was called the Eagle Tavern, and it was a very popular place for people to do their first time. I wish I could remember some of the names, but some really well-known guys now. You know what I mean? Because I look back on the thing, like I still have like the clipping from it from the Daily News or something like. So that was like the place to start, which was cool. And then to get into the regular clubs, they developed what they called bringer shows. That's what became in the 90s after like the whole, because
that's when you bring friends of yours.
Stand-up became so popular.
That pay, right? Is it?
Yeah. So when I came up and I started doing open mics, and this is the late 90s and stuff, and you have to bring people, but it was great because you could work Carolines. If you can get 10 friends, and everybody got 10 friends, and there was always someone to tape, you could get a tremendous tape from Caroline's Comedy Club, which was gold. You know what I mean? To send out to network, to agencies and the clubs and stuff like that. So, as much as people hated it, getting friends and stuff like that, it was something that it was invaluable.
So when you got that first gig at the Homestead,
how
did you get it? I mean, what was the process?
That was I think just a stand like a sign up wait list. You know what I mean? I don't think that wasn't like a bringer thing. That was just an open mic because it was only comics in the crowd.
So you didn't have to submit anything. You just wait list.
Yeah, and it was like 3 minutes, which is like an eternity when you're first starting. 3 minutes is like, how am I going to get through 3 minutes? Now you can't even do one bit in 3 minutes.
I know. I had a kid in here that he called in. He said, I'm going to be down here from New York City for my girlfriend's, part of her family's having a wedding. We're coming to that on Hilton Head Island. Can I come in and do 5 minutes? I said, you know what? You can come in and do 10 minutes. And I thought at the time, I'll do you a favor, take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He goes, no, I have 5 minutes. That's what he said. And he had 5 minutes and he came in and did it.
It is. It's so hard because fortunately, and I'm not going to, I hate to be braggadocious or anything, but it's something I've always wanted to do, something I knew I had the ability to do, so I never had those nightmare dying up there sets. I always had good things, but I've seen people, and not that I had, of course, I had to develop my material and everything else, but when you have 3 minutes and then you're not winning the crowd over right away, then you burn your A material, or whatever you consider your A material, right away. So then if you even get a couple of chuckles on that, you're like, well, now I got 2 minutes of nothing. Now I've got nothing left because I just burned everything that I had. And the people in the house, so what do you do, So it's like, it's such a dichotomy of learning. It's the greatest thing because you're always learning. You're always developing and always learning. Anybody will tell you that. I'm sure if you have, I don't know who the oldest comedian is right now, but even any of the pros, all the pros,
Rickles is still around.
Yeah. Or even the guys like Seinfeld or Louis Black and those guys. They're still, every night you're still learning something new. Every night. It's the weirdest thing. You always pick up something.
Well, if you're good, you're learning something new.
Yeah, right.
Because you have those that don't.
Yeah, I guess. And a lot of people just do a scripted thing. Like you've seen my show. I mix it around. I don't do the same material. I'll throw in, I'll throw in different jokes that I didn't do last night, or I'll do them in different order.
Yes.
And, and just kind of appropriate to what something will come up. And we'll talk to a crowd and they'll mention something about whatever it is. I think, well, now I'll do that bit. You know what I mean?
And I think you're one of the first ones that have done that in there, because usually they have their ending. Their ender is the same every night.
They have like their classic closer, yeah.
And like last night, I wanted to come back up and talk about the podcast a little bit after you got done. So I stood up, and then you went on to something else. So I sat back down because I thought you were getting in. I stood up again. Damn it! So I sat back down. So I finally, I just waited. I waited till you were done. That.
Because to me, because it was so much fun, and that to me, the fun is just going with what they are. It's different if you do a theater, especially something on television. You got to stick to it. And you have a scripted in it, and you have a classic closer, but.
And I wouldn't call myself jaded, but I have seen a lot of comics, and I've been to a lot of comedy clubs. And if anybody's listening to this for the first time, I'm not a comedian at all. I do a mentalism show. I was a stage comedy hypnotist before that. So, and I don't even claim to be a stand-up. So I even go up on stage when I open and say, listen, you don't have to laugh at me because I don't care. I'm not a stand-up.
So it takes all of a sudden it takes a little bit of heat
yeah,
off. Yeah,
it does. And but I don't. And again, I don't want to say I'm jaded, but I'm very particular about the comics that I see now because they have to be really funny. I want top. If I go to a comedy club, I want to see really good comedy. And that's what we're shooting for with the club here. And so I didn't know too much about you coming in, other than just what was on the internet.
Yeah.
And so I was, after the first night, I laughed my ass off the first night. And each night, new things make me laugh. And that is my mark of a good comedian.
Oh, thanks.
And you do very well.
Thank you very much, because that's what I pride myself on, you know. First of all, just bringing different things in every night. And I always try to, at least, because some people, like, if you'll have comedians, how long has the club been here?
It's on April 1st is when it opened of this year.
Next year, if you have comics, and I'm not going to say they're good or bad, but they'll do the same thing, almost like it's a script. You'll see them next year; it'll be the same.
And I've noticed that the 4 days have been here, and so I would imagine that when they came back,
and I just don't. For one thing, I think it's boring. You know what I mean? I'd be bored with it. But I just can't understand, because if you have the ability, your mind is always working. You're always thinking new things. So when I'm up there, I'm always, if I'm talking to someone or something comes up, a new bit comes into my head, and you just do it because you have that ability. And
yeah,
you got to remember it.
I have my 75-minute show, so I have a little advantage because my wife helps me with the show, and she seats people, she runs lights and sound, and so I would try out a new thing, and she will let me know afterwards. She goes, "No, don't ever do that again," or "You need to tweak it." So she tells me right then, because she hadn't been to a comedy club when I met her, and she didn't see a mentalist at all. So she's like a fresh pair of eyes. Yeah,
she's savvy, because I remember someone telling me. And I remember which club. It was one of the clubs in Jersey. That was pretty. It's not there anymore, but it was one of the prominent clubs in the day, the 80s, you know. And Jay Leno, that's when Jay Leno was still doing clubs. And the comedian, I guess he was the host or whatever. And he says, "Do you have any advice for me?" And he says, "Yeah. Do you have any jokes that don't work, that don't really get you laughs?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Why?" Get rid of them. So your wife is exactly right. If it's not either it needs more work, or it's just not something that's ever going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I have people in the same profession that I'm in, and also variety. I think we all fall under variety artist, is what we fall under, right? Under that.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
And magicians will talk to me, and other mentalists will talk to me, and they say, "Well, what's your closer? How do you pick a closer?" I said, "I don't pick a closer." I said, "I have a thing that I do last." And I said, "But I don't pick a closer." I said, "That's where you're going wrong." Same reason as what Jay Leno was saying, was because everything that I do can be a closer. I don't want anything in the show that can't be a closer.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's demographics. Like the last night I had that whole table was kids, and did I close with the thing with the bank, like with the bank deposit?
Yes.
Because they would die and laugh. And this is a 14-year-old kid that's fallen out of his chair. And I'm thinking, because I'm not going to go do something else, say if it's a predominantly, because of most clubs with the age group, most people are married, most of them have kids, so you can stick to that. You know what I mean? But I was going to stay away from all that, because these kids were mostly teenagers, and that's the beauty of this club.
And probably the first time they had been to a comedian.
I just couldn't believe how
you were their first.
How hard they laughed, because when you're 14, 19, those kids were all under 20 years old, and they would they laughed so hard, and it was so much fun for me to do. I didn't want to get off. I don't know how much time I did. I could have kept going.
No, it was like an hour and 15 minutes maybe last night.
Yeah,
it was really good. It was flowing. It was really good.
Yeah, and I just could have kept going because they were just so much fun. And that's what you do. And then you got to, when you come home, and then you remember things that work, and then you work on them, and then they become real bits that you'll use next time, not just things. Because you always have, if you have that natural ability, which I always say you should have, you can create things up there. But then they're not refined. So if it's a great idea, you go home, and then that's when you put it into the perfect wording, and then it becomes a real bit for ever, not forever, but for your future.
Yeah. What's your process with that? Because I've seen some comics come in, some of them video, and the other ones will record every night with a recorder or their iPhone. So what do you do?
Yeah, many do, and it's always a good idea. I think I would tell people that they should do it, but for me, it just never worked because I would never. First of all, I hated the sound of my own voice, and I always thought I'm better off just remembering it on the way I remember it instead of then, and then improve it that way. It just never worked for me. But I knew people that did it all the time, and I'm sure because if you come up with something that's a real gem, you don't want to forget it. You know what I mean? And I think that's why they do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You hate your voice. Well, your voice is golden because my wife said, and
yeah.
I told you that she, without looking, and when she first heard you on stage, you sounded like Billy Crystal. And you said that has been told to you before.
That's been told to me so many times. I mean, it's funny. Usually, because I think I don't know how old he is now, but more like 10 years ago, every time if I would get into a cab in the city, and people, I didn't even know, they didn't even know I was a comic, and they say, you sound exactly like Billy Crystal, which is good because he's from 2 towns away from where I grew up. He's from Long Beach.
Is he really?
Yeah. So that's why it is. We all have that. It's like I'll tell you, all in that little, I don't know how many square miles. Eddie Murphy and Kevin James and Jerry Seinfeld and Billy Crystal, and we all came from the same 10 square miles, So
what do you have in the water?
I don't know. Sarcasm, because that's what everyone. It's such a different view of the world because there's so many people crammed into Nassau County. I'll give you one quick, and I don't want to, because Nassau County is just one county, has the same population and economy of 7 different states. One county.
Really?
Yeah. So it just breeds sarcasm just because you're just jammed together. And I don't know what it is, but and I could go on. Larry Miller. I could go on and on. There's a million more, all from that same little town.
That's interesting.
Yeah, from that little square, probably 10 miles. Yeah.
So when you started, you explained it earlier how you started and how you got into the homestead, and then also was it Caroline's? You said.
Yeah.
Can you, if you were starting now? Could you do the same thing now, or how would it be different to get your name out there and get started now?
It's different now. It's you have to. There's not as I can't say it's easier, but I think it is because they're looking for something a little bit more. It's more social media now. It is how many Twitter followers you got, how many, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
who's looking at the clubs?
So it's not, yeah.
Or the bookers?
The bookers, yeah. So they're looking, back in the day, they weren't looking for, I'm not, all those 80s people, Rosie O'Donnell, and Roseanne Barr, who's before that even, people judge everybody now on their look. They want you to be 20, they want you to have a certain look. But to me, it's awful because I'm in the clubs in the city. I feel like I'm watching the same person over and over and over again. They talk about the same things. They talk about the same social media, whatever they're talking about, Instagram. I feel like I'm watching the same thing all night for 20 different guys.
Because that's what they have. They're all looking down at their phones all the time.
And that's what the industry wants. For some reason, that's... So.
And that kind of surprised you last night. I think it legitimately surprised you because none of the kids had phones in their hands.
Yeah. Oh gosh. You go in the city and everybody, they're watching, kind of like watching, but they're kind of constantly. Not one of them touched those. That's why I commended their parents for for their behavior, for their attentiveness. So
you think it is easier now to get started or not?
I think so. I was going to say, my initial reaction was not going to be easier but different, but I think it is easier. I think it's just because it's so much easier between, you can Vine and you can YouTube and you can create your own, following and buzz where you had to rely on the industry. You had to rely on clubs putting you up. You had to rely on agents using you. You had to rely on bookers at clubs using you. Now you can just create your own. You can just put it, you don't have to worry about getting on TV or getting a late night television spot. You just put yourself on TV now, and people can watch it, and people watch them all the time. So
would you say, and I don't know the answer to this, that's why I'm asking you, would you say the number of comics out there now is more than ever before?
I don't know. Because I came right after the big boom, and I think at that point was the most saturated because everybody at that time just made it huge. Every single person. It was almost like a pyramid scheme. It's like you joined, once you just got in, and there was so many comics and so many venues. You know, there was so many different stand-up shows on TV. You know, Caroline's had a comedy hour, and even the Improv, and so many people looking for sitcoms that you would just get pushed up like a pyramid. You know what I mean? So you joined in, and as long as there was people joining in below you, they'd push you up. And then there was, so there were people with marginal ability that got their own development deal and their own sitcom. Didn't mean they lasted, you know, but they certainly got their opportunities just because it was so many people. But like a pyramid scheme does, it ends up bottoming out because then there's just too many people to push everybody through.
Right.
And that's what happened. It just became so saturated, and then people got tired of seeing it so much. They weren't going to the clubs anymore because there was so much on TV, so it kind of fizzled out for a while. But I think it's in a good place now. I really do.
What about quality? Quality of the people that are coming out now? Because you mentioned that they're all talking about the same things.
Yeah. There's a couple that are great. But honestly, and I don't know, I feel for the most part, I feel like I'm watching the same person. Because they all have the same look, whether it's male or female. I feel like every premise, they're all talking about the same premises, you know? And that I don't like, you know? There are some people that have clever takes on it, but it still seems to be the same premise no matter what, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So. And I don't get to too many comedy clubs now because ever since April 1st when this place opened, I'm working 7 nights a week. And so I see the comics that are in here. And we have some pretty good comics in here. I mean, we have a few ones that probably won't come back, but we have some pretty good comics in here. But we have like Mike Armstrong, and we have Dean Napolitano, we have Andy Pitts, we have you. But each of you, you have stories, but the stories are different and unique to you. I haven't heard anybody, except for a few hack comics that I've had in here, they don't repeat other comics' material. You have your own.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what you have
to do. Or the premise, even.
That's what I do. If I think of something and I think it's been remotely done, I just throw it away. Why work on it? Why even bother? You know? Why just go on to something
like airlines.
Fresh and bingo. That was probably my thing I was going to say. Airline material. Even if it's it's so hard. Not that there's not funny things. Sometimes people do come up with stuff, but I think it's just such an overdone premise. Why even bother? Don't waste your time doing it. Work on something else that's a fresher or a unique premise, you know? I've heard some, like I remember Seinfeld used to have a great bit about McDonald's, and fast food always stuck in my craw because it was just so overdone. Just everybody talked about going to fast food restaurants and stuff, but he would talk about McDonald's, about how they would put the numbers up front, you know, 10 billion served, 100 billion served. He says, what's their ultimate goal? You know, he says, what could possibly, he says, what, just cows surrendering voluntarily? You know, so like that is hysterical. You know, like they just come up to the front door. He says, I see the numbers. I know it's inevitable. He says, I'm turning myself in. I'd like to be a Big Mac if possible. You know? So
it would be nice if they had a goal, right? So you knew when they were going to stop. So what is your, or was, not is, hopefully it wasn't this week, but what was your worst gig ever and why?
Oh gosh, that's a good tough question. I think it was when I first started, you know, from being up north, that there was this Catskills thing from the day, from like you were talking about, from Bob Hope and all those guys, and there were still a couple of people places that were barely hanging on, you know, that still did stand-up comedy stuff. So I ended up getting booked at one. I don't think there's any left now, but this is when I first started, and I was just grasping at gigs, you know. So I did it with a couple of other comics, and then there were these bats flying around. So
this was inside.
This was inside, and this was about 100 90-year-old Jewish people from Brooklyn in the Catskills with bring their own booze, who were just. Let's just put it this way: the bat was like the highlight of the show. That's, you know, because it was so funny. It was such a, I don't know why the rooms hung on, but they still wanted to see the same people. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I can't think of any names, but like Jack Benny's not coming tonight. You know what I mean? Like or whoever, you know, like, and they were still thinking. So they didn't want to hear any fresh, new, young comedians. You know what I mean? They
wanted to hear what they liked.
Yeah. So that was. I don't know if that was the worst or that was just certainly probably the most bizarre. And I remember with the other comics who were driving back to New York City, and they were all mad at me because they were so mad at me because I had the bat to work with. Because I was like, yeah, because they're like, we had nothing but people just staring at us. You had the bat, man. You had So I was like, at least I got some reaction out of them because there was a bat flying around inside. So.
And the best one, I mean, is the one in the living room the best gig you ever had?
I don't know. But I've had so many. I've been so fortunate. So many really good gigs.
That's interesting that you say that because I asked these questions on other podcasts, and some people will say, "Oh, I've had so many bad ones." Let me think of which one I can tell you. But I like it when it's the opposite because
when I take the job, it may not be the job you want that week. Of course, everybody wants to be in the best club and the best money, but you agree to do it. You bring it. I write fresh material. I come up, you see my energy, you do it. So I don't, I don't usually have that problem because people will come in here saying, first joke doesn't work or something, and they'll start putting the crowd down. You know what I mean? You don't do that. You go the other way. You bring them up.
Yeah, right.
So luckily I have that gift, I guess, and I could just and you bring them in. If it doesn't happen within the first 10 seconds, at least the first minute or two, and then you get the credibility, and then they're yours, and then you just keep building and building and building and building.
And you have TV credits. I mean, I introduced you, so you have Conan and also Comedy Central.
Comedy Central, yeah.
Yeah, and did you have a special on Comedy Central?
I didn't I haven't done a half an hour. I would love to. Right now, they're really, like I was just saying, they're really just giving them to like the 20-year-old guys. You know what I mean? Like I say, if you watch a new Comedy Central half hour, it looks like the same guy over and over and over again.
That's what keeps me going. I worked for Johnson & Johnson for 6 years, and my degrees are in business. But now I'm 44, and I'm overqualified. I can't get a job. So that's.
But there's so many hysterical, unknown. Like a good friend of mine's Tom Cotter. I don't know if you know, he was on America's Got Talent.
I know, yes, I know the name.
2 or 3 years ago, and he was down to the final 2.
I know who you're talking about, yes.
Met that far. One of my best friends, And they were blown away because they couldn't fathom that he was like me. Just working, you know what I mean? You should have your own sitcom. You should be working, you know what I mean? Like, how can you possibly be here? And Tom, to his credit, he's like, there's a lot of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not everybody. So that blew me because they were blown away at the fact that he could be that good and not be ultra successful.
You mean the judges?
Yeah, like Howard Stern.
Howie
and
Mandel,
they're comics,
Howie Mandel should not.
Right. They were blown away at the fact, like they couldn't say, why are you here? Why are you not? And he says, I can name so many. We're all so good. We're all, have the ability. But he says it's tough. There's a lot of demographics that go into it. They have to, that they have to fill. And for whatever the reason, right now I say the big thing is they want just a 20-year-old, whether it's, So
same thing with.
But that's why I keep all my material at that, you know what I mean? I don't go to the. I try to keep it so I can. Like you saw last night, they were under 20, and I had them rolling in the aisle. So you got to keep that demographic. You can't get into just having kids. You know what I mean? People will just complain about their kids, complain about how they're getting older, how their back hurt. You can't do that. You know what I mean? And you can't do that and work in the city or get TV spots because they've seen it. It's you know what I mean?
That's right.
It's not going to work, so you're not going to get it. So.
Now, do you have a manager?
Yes, I do.
What's the difference for people listening, the difference between a manager and an agent?
Yeah. Well, a manager is supposed to get you an agent. Manager is supposed to manage your dates, and they try to find you top-notch agents to work with, which is hard to, because even if they find you a great agent, the big-time agents, they don't want to cultivate your careir. They don't want to make phone calls for less than $20,000. You know what I mean? They say they're
order takers.
So if they get you a big time agent, they want you to be making huge money already. They're not going to, So it's like a catch-22, just like anything else,
right. And how'd you find? Not just I don't want you to give any trade secrets away, but as someone coming up in the business, how would they find a manager?
Boy, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard now. Most of them in New York, anyway. The easiest way is a lot of the clubs manage comics.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah. So, which helps because you get the spots at the clubs, and you get the auditions that they have at the clubs for the festivals and things like that, and they have the access. So that's the best way to find than to go out and try to send somebody a clip and then to sign you and everything else. None of it's easy. It never is. People and I think it maybe not be the exact same way, but it's an age-old problem. I mean, I'm sure people throughout history from vaudeville had the same problem finding representation and the right people to make the right things happen.
It is because I don't know. Well, I have people after my show, and I bet you do too. But they want to know who the agent is. Oh, why aren't you on America's Got Talent? And I couldn't get an agent to look at me until I had been in the business for years and got a show in a theater, and then they gave me credit, and then they started calling me. And you don't get them right off the bat. If you do, it's very hard to get them right off the bat.
That's right. And then, of course, there's, I'm trying to be nice, but there's bottom feeders. And there's and everything in between, And there's an age-old adage. It's like everybody wants to be with such and such, all the big agencies, just like I do. Everybody wants to be with them, but they don't want you. It's like you want them now. But they don't want you until basically you don't need them.
That's right.
So it's like, you know what I mean?
Or they lose one of their headliners.
So
because they're doing well.
I want them now, because they can book all these great gigs for me. But like by the time they want me, I won't need them. Right. I already have all the things working. So
that's right. Because I'd say 90% of what I do still, I book myself.
Yeah.
What about for you? Do you book
Luckily,
a lot yourself?
I have a guy. He's a manager / agent, and it's good because he's pretty well connected, and it saves me a lot of phone calls because with these bookers you leave the voicemails and the text and the emails and everything, they just don't get back to you. So he's got like a stable of acts. So when he gets them on the phone, he can book everybody. So you get them on. So you can get me 2 weeks there, one of his acts 2 weeks. So it's easier to just call people back, say it's me again. When can I get in there? Can I get in there? So that's definitely a huge benefit to have, not to have to worry about.
Well, I think every one of my listeners have heard what I'm about to say, and I want to hear what your answer is. If somebody comes up to me and just general entertainment, what's the most important thing that you can give me, tip-wise, piece of advice to be in the entertainment business? And I always say boldness, and it's not necessarily I'm not talking about on stage. I'm talking about behind the scenes when you're calling. I call the president of companies and let them refer me down to the bookers, or I call people that nobody else wants to call, or I do things that nobody else wants to do because that's the boldness. It's that thing that nobody else does to get the business. That's what I think has helped me most in my career.
And it's not one size fits all.
No.
Your boldness could be someone else's, just come up with the most creative idea.
That's right.
Of course, you have to be persistent, and of course, there's always, which is the worst thing. You got to be persistent. Yeah, but then there's a difference between being persistent and being a pain in the ass. Like this guy's just, I can't hear from him again. Oh, but I thought you were supposed to be persistent. No, but stop calling me. So it's just.
What would be the top thing for you? What would you recommend to people?
I think confidence. Which is only doing it. Just you know what it's like being a performer. Just do it wherever you can, whenever you can, especially when you're starting out. That's the only way you're going to create confidence in yourself, and that's the only way you're going to get the confidence to network and have something marketable to move to sell.
That's really good. And how do you balance? You have kids.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with being on the road? How long are you on the road each year?
Luckily, there's a lot of work out of the New York metro area, so I don't.
Oh, nice. So you get to stay kind of local.
Yeah, so I'm local 75% of the time.
What are you doing down here on Hilton Head Island then?
You're both good friends with my agent.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've worked for them many times before, so. whenever this was back in March, we won Tom McTiernan for April or for August, so that's how that worked out.
And it's a nice vacation too.
Oh, it is. It's always good to travel, especially when you have the accommodations here are great, club's great, and the summers you I don't say take whatever you can get, but some places like this is where you're supposed to be working, because this is the summer. This is a summer place. This is where you want to be. So
what you were near the city at least, but now you live in the city now.
Yeah.
What's the importance of people? I mean, we have people like Rodney Carrington down in Texas, and you know who Rodney is.
Oh yeah.
And people like that don't live in the cities. They don't live in L.A. They don't live in New York. What's the importance for a comic to move? Because I've heard mixed, but mostly they say you have to move to New York or you have to move to L.A.
That's an excellent question, because there are people who don't.
Yeah.
There are people who don't, and there's a lot of people that live in New York or L.A. that you've never heard of, and they don't get any stage time. So that I wish I had an answer for, because there are people, I don't know how they make it work, or like what's his name? I don't remember his real name. Carrot Top.
Oh yes.
From Orlando.
Yep.
And he made it work, or like Larry the Cable Guy, wherever he was from, and
because I know even Bill Murray. Bill Murray lives in Charleston.
Yeah.
Now, with his kids, and so he doesn't even live out in California.
And there are other guys, So because New York and LA, they're just so competitive, and the clubs know it. It's so hard to get spots. You have to have so many. You have to have so much happening at the time to get the spots. So it's everybody thinks it's when you get there. Oh, where have you been?
All the opportunities open up.
Where
doors.
have you been? Go on stage. No, because Chris Rock is going up tonight and David Tell's going. So it's like who are so. But by the same token, it's a good idea if you want to take it seriously to do it to move there, but don't expect it to be easy, and don't just by moving there. It's you got to still do the same things you would do like you in Texas. You still have to market yourself. You can't just. Well, I live in New York now, so I'm like, where's the phone calls? You know what I mean?
Right.
Doesn't work that way either.
And how do you choose? If you are, for example, from, I don't know, we'll pick Kentucky. Do you move to New York or do you move to L.A.? I mean, is there a difference? Would you move to one or the other for different reasons?
That's another good question. I think New York has more opportunity for comics. L.A. has a lot of clubs, but there are a couple of shows now, especially with Jimmy Fallon moving out there. There's that, Letterman was always there. There's because when you have people that are comics, they're writers for the shows, for the Tonight Show or for Jon Stewart or so they're all comics and they get spots. But in LA, all the people on the TV shows, most of them are comics, and most of the writers are comics. So it's so hard to get stage time because it's all those guys that are getting the stage time. So if you come from Kansas and move to LA and try to get spots, it's just like. But New York, I think, has more clubs, more spots, and the most importantly, when you're starting out, more weekend rooms. So because there's so much suburbs, and there's a lot of clubs like this that you can work on Friday and Saturdays on Long Island and Connecticut and New Jersey and stuff to supplement your
nice.
your income.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we've been going on for 48 minutes now. So
that went fast, huh?
And we have to get the club set up because we have our last night together tonight, starting at 8.
Yeah.
But how? I know you're all over social media, but how do people, if they're listening to this, get a hold of you to book you or? Whatever?
Yeah. My Twitter is Tom _McTiernan. Because someone else took Tom McTiernan and asked me why. But you can directly, or you can call I have a booking agent. It's Omnipop in New York.
Okay, you got a website?
I have one I have a brand new one in the works.
Okay.
So I currently got rid of the other one because I have to do. I'm not real savvy on this, so I forget what they call it. Where you can do it, where you have the mobile and the other. What's the thing?
Oh, mobile responsive.
Mobile responsive. So that's what I'm doing right now, so that you can go on both and look on both. So hopefully that'll be done by September.
Are you doing it yourself, or?
No, I have someone doing it. There's a guy who does it for a lot of comics, and he does a good job. And he also does all the updates, because schedules change so much.
That's right.
So he'll just keep updating and updating and updating.
I use Squarespace for my website, and I've been using it for the past couple of years now, and it seems to be going very well, and it's mobile responsive. By the way, Squarespace, if you want to sponsor the podcast, that would be good. But I love you guys.
That's right, yeah.
But it's really good. I recommend that to anybody out there that doesn't know of anyone that can do it for them. It's very easy to set it up and very easy to maintain. You can do it from your web, from your browser.
And you post all your podcasts.
All the podcasts are on it and everything. So
I'll be doing the same thing. So I'll have you on mine when I get mine. When I get mine up and going.
You got what podcast now? Or
I don't have it, but when I get the website going.
Oh, the website going.
Yeah. So like I said, that should be hopefully by September.
Yeah.
If not earlier.
Good. All right. Well, that's good, Tom. You came in early, and we'll knock it out tonight. But thanks.
Thanks
a lot for doing this.
It's been a great week.
Thank you very much.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yep.